Hello everyone. Now, I was actually planning on featuring a different ship today, but honestly, with all the shitstorm that's been going on in World of Warships or in general with Wargaming, I figured I'd just take a ship that I've recently featured, and that way I can just talk without having to focus too much on the gameplay in general. Of course, for those that aren't aware, there's been once again more drama with Wargaming for the second time in a very short while. Well, let's start off with the obvious. The first time this drama happened, back in May, there was the whole Sir Foch incident. For those that aren't aware, World of Tanks contributor made a vid where he commented on a new upcoming premium and called it extremely pay to win. It was quite overpowered apparently, and he just straight up called, well, he said a bunch of dumb shit that was obviously quite offensive to Wargaming, and Wargaming decided to remove him as a CC. Now, if that was all they would have done, it would have been perfectly fine. I mean, CC is something they can give and take away as they wish. It's a position that represents their company, so if they don't want someone representing it, that's their choice to do, and there's not really much anyone can complain about. The problem is, of course, that they went full retard and decided to start to demand that he took down the vid where he criticized both the ship and them in general, and he of course said no, there's no way I'm gonna take it down. And then they went super full retard and started using DMCA, aka YouTube's copyright complaint, and tried to take it down with the help of that. Now that of course started a massive shitstorm of its own, because well, they were basically going after the livelihood of many YouTubers, and that led to Jingles, for example, leaving the whole the community contributor program, and in general not featuring as much World of Warships and focusing checking out new games and so forth. Basically, they created this massive shitstorm, and it became worse and worse with like the different offices once again not communicating between each other, just the way we see in World of Warships quite often. Like the NA office releases one statement and then the EU office releases another one, and they contradict each other, and it's a massive clusterfuck, and it became a massive drama fest until finally someone who had had some sort of PR education stepped in and decided to sort it all out by apologizing and basically getting everyone to sign a paper where they say they will never try to DMCA, go after any sort of bids with copyright claims, and that kind of finally calmed it down. But that was of course something they should have done right at the start. Well, ideally they should never even have gone for the copyright claims, but as soon as someone made that mistake, they should have let the PR dude handle it. Now, what does that have to do with the current situation? Well, Wargaming recently released a new premium, the Graf Zeppelin. Now, for those wondering, Flamu, why haven't you featured the Graf Zeppelin? Well, I did feature it in a previous version, but the newer version, the one with the 2 fighters and 3 bombers, well, that one was never really available. The one with the AP bombers was never really available to me, and it wasn't really available to the other EU CCs either. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened. This is something that happens quite often, and that's of course part of basically the EU CCs getting the shaft, which is quite common. For example, recent times this has happened was Missouri, the first tier 9 premium, the first battleship with a radar, the first 3 XP premium, basically a huge event, and NACCs all got to test it and play it and make reviews, and us EUCCs had to wait until we could actually buy it, which I had to do before I could start posting any reviews on it. And it also happened with the König Albert, which is a German battleship and a German tier 3 premium battleship that's going to get removed from the shop for being too overpowered. But that was they gave it to NACCs but not EUCCs. If someone can explain the logic behind giving a German battleship to be reviewed by NACCs but not EUCCs, feel free to tell me how that makes any goddamn sense. But that happened anyway, and well, just in the same way, we never really got to test the Graf Zeppelin. For example, that's why Farazeleth, who loves CVs and plays mostly carriers, had to wait until he could buy it himself. And well, I had no interest in buying it. Those that watch my stream know that As soon as I heard about the fact that they were getting rid of the torp bombers and giving it bombers instead, I just said on my stream that you shouldn't buy it. I don't recommend it because bomber-based carriers are really unreliable and in general not very enjoyable to play. So that's of course why it hasn't been featured. That's why I haven't really bothered featuring it, because I have no intention of buying that ship, especially now with all the shit show going on. So what does this have to do with the story? Well, I'm just giving you some background story here. I chase an NACC who usually isn't that vocal about complaining about various things. Made a vid on this one where he straight up called it pretty damn garbage, not surprisingly, and well, he said that whoever made it should be fired. And now that doesn't sound too bad, especially compared to some other stuff we have heard and said. But Wargaming decided to throw an absolute shit fit over this, and they went once again full retard. In this case, they decided that they were going to kick him from the community contributor program, and they claimed that the Graf Zeppelin not only was completely finished, even though it clearly wasn't. It was clearly like they had gotten a bunch of feedback from the super testers saying that it was in a horrible state, but they still decided to release it, and they still tried to claim that no, it's perfectly finished, it's perfectly fine, and the reason they were kicking iChase from the CZ program was because he said that whoever made this should be fired. Well, that doesn't really sound like a big infraction to me. And the overall impression anyone who really watched this drama got was that Wargaming was upset that someone gave them pretty negative criticism, and they decided to take it out on one of their most popular CCs to kind of make an example. Okay, so this is of course straight up full retard once again. And instead of, well, once they realized that this was backfiring big time, well, you know, of course, ideally they should have done this before this even backfired. The whole idea of kicking someone for this is retarded, but they should have dealt with it. They should have let, once again, just like with the Sir Foch incident, they should have let the PR dudes handle it. Instead, they started trying to defend their decision, and they made all these claims about how the Graf Zeppelin, you needed to adapt to play it, and you needed to learn it, or whatever. Like, they were just piling on the bullshit and the lies, instead of just letting the PR dude handle it right away. So, finally, of course, the PR dude does step in, probably the same guy who had to handle the Sir Foch incident, and once again we get an apology, once again signed by a bunch of Wargaming dudes, where they say that whoopsie daisy, maybe you were right after all, and they are pulling the Graf Zeppelin from all the stores and all of this, and they're giving a bunch of consolation prizes to whoever bought it, because, well, it looks more like they don't want anyone to refund it, so that's why they're giving a bunch of consolation prizes. Because a lot of people were going for the refunds because of how terrible the ship was. So, once again, like, it's good that they are manning up and realizing they're making these mistakes, but it would be nicer if they would learn to do this before they go full retard, because they seem to always have this almost seems to have these moments. It's becoming a theme, really. The Sir Foch incident was in May, and we're barely finishing the summer here, and we're starting to see a theme. They mess up, then there's this mindless scrambling with no real communication between the various offices, NA, EU, Russia, whatever. Everyone says their own thing. They randomly throw in some lies. It's a finished product, and in general just show some really horribly anti-community behavior. And then there's that PR dude who has to show up and clear out the whole shit show with one definitive statement, and finally apparently get some sort of communication between all these different Wargaming offices. So one can only wonder if this really is going to happen a third time. The first time, okay, someone messed up, it can be fixed. Second time in such a short while, like, seriously? Had these guys who are interacting with the community, haven't any of them had any sort of training? You'd think that you'd get some sort of PR training if you're having to interact and be the public face of the image and publicly comment and like give this sort of feedback. Because I mean, I don't have PR education, but even I can tell you, as soon as I saw that, I could tell you that it was going to be a shitstorm. And I don't understand how they can be so blind to the consequences that their actions will have to actually go through with some of these things. Anyway, that's the current state of what's going on, basically. and my comments on it, and I'm not really very impressed with this whole shit show in general. As far as I know, they did make amends. I think they offered iChase the CC position back, but I think he didn't take it or whatever. Entirely up to him. Don't judge him either way. I mean, he could just as well have taken it for the shits and giggles, or he can just tell him to fuck off. That's also equally funny. But just a stupid unnecessary mess once again. And the reason for, of course, this early release of the Graf Zeppelin was really obvious. Wargaming the German market is one of the biggest markets. There's the Gamescom event going on, so obviously they wanted to cash in on this whole Gamescom event by releasing this new premium at the same time as Gamescom was happening, despite all the protests and despite the complaints about how overpowered it was, or underpowered it was, and how broken it was. So maybe for I know this sounds probably pretty crazy to Wargaming, but maybe for once don't think with your wallet and like give it some extra time. You could have announced the upcoming carrier and then given it some more time to work on it, instead of absolutely going for that release sale and trying to get that cash, because it really looked like a desperate cash grab that was kind of just shitting on the community. Anyway, I've said what I wanted to say about this whole thing. In case you're noticing, there's a pretty insane game actually going on here. I'm trying desperately to claw my team over to a victory here. My team is of course playing far too back, which, wow, how uncommon. But we have a Moskva that's so far back that his radar is pretty much completely useless. We have a Shima who's, assumes trying to torp the Iowa, but ideally I would want him to cap B, maybe cap something else. The enemy has a 150 point lead, and I'm trying to push into B and maybe to get something to happen. I've been using, I don't know if you've been paying attention to my heal usage, but I've been trying to sync my heals extremely accurately this game, because well, when you got these drawn out games, every single piece of health matters, and you really want to maximize your health usage. Iowa gives me full broadside. Ideally this would be citadels, but with the new lowered citadel, you can get away with doing really dumb shit like this Iowa is doing and not be punished at all, which is of course a bit annoying. Another volley for his waterline. Once again, no citadels, and he still lives, which is of course one of the reasons I really didn't like the whole lowering citadel method, because it rewards really terrible play in the worst possible manner. Still though, I do push into the cap. I have one more heal left. I pop my spotter plane to be able to see what's going on the other side of the island, because I was being shot from there, and the spotter plane should give me more information of what's going on. I have actually racked up a nice amount of damage at this point, 218k damage. Not a single kill though, because all my kills seem to be secured by someone else, but considering I am trying to win this game really desperately for my team, it's not really that big of a deal. Of course, it's a bit silly that the Kurfürst has to be the one who attempts to cap B, because no one else will. Shima finally pushes into C and is capping it, but we are still down. The ship count is tied, but we are still down on points because they have held the 2 capture advantage for so long. Trying to get some chip damage in on this Hindenburg as I turn around. Can't sit there in front of him. I think at this point 14 seconds of fire. Might as well endure it. I'm tempted to use the repair, but considering there's a Zao popping up around the corner, using the repair now is practically asking to be hit by permanent fires soon after. So instead I put on my last heal, which should get full heal usage out of it, and I try to turn around fast enough that I'll be able to angle on the Montana when he pops up. Because I don't really want to get stuck in this corner, because then the Zao will burn me, but I think I'll get caught quite broadside because of this. The Montana charges in, and he does get quite a good volley on me. Not too bad though, 15k. It's quite a hard hitting volley, but it's not the end of the world. The Montana is angling though, which means that shooting him isn't going to achieve much. I'd rather go for the Zao, who, even if he angles, if I aim high enough, I should be able to do somewhat decent damage. Once again, not that impressive, 7 bounces, that's of course the amazing Zao armor coming into play, but my damage is more valuable on the Zao right now than it is on the Montana. The secondaries are on the Montana. I pop my Hydra to give me more information of what's going on, and I'm really trying to secure this cap. He angles in time to reduce most of the damage. He bounces my front guns, but my back guns do get penetrations. In this case though, I'm slowing down, not just because I want to cap, but because this Montana has to turn soon or he will ground, and I'm trying to catch him as he turns. That's what I proceed to switch to my back turret view, and as he sails away, I aim for his citadel. But of course, thanks to the new lowered citadel, we actually don't get any citadels, but we do hit him for a nice meaty chunk that takes him low enough that my teammate should be able to finish him off. And at this time I do use my repair since I am in cover, and I really want to finish capping this for my team, because we need this cap at this point. We finally have a points lead, but I am very, very low, and I expect to be going down quite soon. I think they might be even pushing behind me, trying to get into the cap. But if I can get the cap for us, then we'll have a 2-to-1 cap advantage. So even if I go down, we'll have an advantage. The reason I have to do this is, of course, because my teammates are still playing extremely far back and quite safe. Well, not extremely far back, but they're playing maybe safer than they need to. For example, Atago and Ibuki could both put their torpedoes to great use against this narrow choke through which the enemy is trying to push. I'm a bit undecided who I want to shoot. Do I want to shoot the Zao, or do I want to shoot the Hindenburg pushing in behind me? Or even the gearing. I do manage to finish the cap just before I get reset by the gearing though, which is very good, because our team needed that. Ultimately, I decide to go for the Zao. If I could get some big damage on him, that would be very useful for our team. His armor has other, my dispersion and his armor has other plans though, and the damage I actually get is very small. However, Shima Torps might force him to turn and give me a nice amount of broadside. I'm forced to push out, of course, because of the gearing. I can't stay there. Possible torps coming in from the gearing. This should be a citadel. Then again, you never know with Zao armor. I do get one citadel, 3 Europeans and 1 citadel, so that takes him very low. I only have 3.5k health left, but my superstructure should be very saturated because of all the damage I've taken, and the best use of my last volley is to try to chunk this gearing so my Shima has an easier time fighting him. I know I probably will get another volley off, so I try to just chunk out the gearing as much as possible. And sadly, all I get is 1 European, and I think I didn't take enough lead, but there's not much to do about it. I am being jumped by both the Hindenburg and the Bismarck. Secondary is focused on the Hindenburg because he's very low. I do finally get taken down, however, because of, well, they surrounded me from all sides and they kinda chunked me out. I'm not very impressed by my team's positioning. However, because of the time left and because of basically the position that we had at this point, we do manage to clinch a victory out of this game. 301k damage, yeah, it gets rounded to 1k. Not a single kill, which is pretty amusing, but almost 800k credits, which is of course quite nice. Looking at the team score, a pretty hilarious 3.3k base XP on the Große Kurfürst, but not a single kill. All my kills were taken by the Ibuki or the Moskva. We even had a Henry IV, I didn't notice him. He survived the entire time, but he had almost no contribution, so I don't even know what the hell he was doing. He was hiding somewhere the entire game, pretty much. And this game was so damn close, even though we had the ship advantage, simply because my team were playing overly passive most of the time and giving up too much ground to the enemy. Looking at the detailed report, it's actually, what is pretty impressive here is, well, first of all, potential damage, 3.3 million, that's always quite good. Damage received is actually the highest potential damage you can receive in a Große Kurfürst. This is with every single heal healing 100% of the healing you can get. This is literally as optimal of incoming healing as you can get, and that's pretty much the max. It's slightly over the max actually, because the last shell that hit me did more damage than my remaining health, so that's why it's slightly above the possible max damage received. So, but still 195,000 damage received in the Große Kurfürst. Of course, that's nothing compared to what you can take in the Conqueror, but it's still a pretty impressive amount. Damage, of course, 300k. Other than that, a very nice game. XP wise, well, it was the daily win thing, daily win bonus, that's why I got so much XP. I finally got a captain point on this guy as well, since, well, you know what build I have, but I'm still working on getting my 19-point captain on my Russian account. One more interesting thing about that incoming damages, you can see just how many from the opposing team and just how much they shot at me. You know you've been doing your job in a battleship when it takes when the people who shot at you doesn't fit on one page, but the game has to make a second page of people shooting at you to make it fit. So obviously a pretty enjoyable game, and one where it really shows off why I like to call the Große Kurfürst the tank, and why of course I enjoyed the tank build on that ship. Anyway, a bit of a different commentary today, just wanted to comment on all the happenings and so forth. I'll be back with my normal commentary tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will talk to you tomorrow.